am all excited because I'm about ready to start. I've only had it for about a day and I'm already starting to create some mounts to install in the air compressor, air tank, and then also start working on the mounts for the air conditioning condenser. Also for a water tank, a gray water tank is going to go between the chassis rails here, so I can get most of that stuff done out of the way before, of course, mounting the camper on, when it's going to be a lot harder to access all that, a lot harder. So if not impossible for some of the things. In today's video of building out an Expedition camper, I prepare the Expedition camper subframe for attachment of future planned items and have a lot of frustrations and share some of those and the challenges in going through making this simple modification. So hang on tight, here we go. Problem is, what EarthCruiser provided here was this subframe mount. Has this extension on there. They put that extension on so they can mount their side under storage boxes, but this is really going to be in the way of how I'm going to mount my storage boxes and also my air conditioning condenser on this side. There's another one on the other side that's going to be away my stairs, and unfortunately that means I got to take these off, cut them down, which is going to be a pain because that's some pretty thick hard metal there, and it's a lot of it. In order to disconnect this frame, loosen this up, which doesn't seem all that hard, but on the back side here, brake lines, electrical lines, fuel line, and this evaporative canister. All right, so this is really messed up. This whole cage thing, I've got to take off so I can cut it off without being right next to the subframe. The problem is, they torque these bolts down, so this is why one should be using a torque wrench. I can't even get these loosened, and not only that, but I got to use both hands in order to get them loosened, barely without stripping this bolt off. And then somehow I still got to get in the backside and hold a wrench in between these fuel lines and brake lines without damaging those. This is way too tightened down, way too tightened down. This needs to be field repairable, right? I don't even have a socket big enough for the spring bolt on that. That's, I don't know what that is, a 25 mil or higher. It's bigger than a 1-inch. Who has bigger than a 1-inch socket in their typical toolkit? I mean, that's already big. And so that's not field repairable. This is not field repairable because it's torqued down so damn hard. Okay, so I've got some movement, but now of course it's pressing up against the fuel lines. I'm one day into this project, and I'm undoing the work of others because they didn't do it in a way that's workable. Way over torqued them. And didn't think about the end user at all. That is not okay. This is hours and hours and hours of wasted time. It's saw blades that are going to be completely wasted to cut this down. That's a lot of money. I need to be building out the truck, not fixing what somebody else didn't do right. But again, this is not field repairable.
Not with standard tools. Field repairing doesn't mean pulling out your air compressor with an air gun so you can get a bolt gun done. And having two people put a hole in the backside of it.
And there's a lot of pride that went into thinking through this and putting it together. But you got to think about how people are also going to take it apart and change it and modify it. But this is cockeyed too, and that's part of the problem. It's not like it's moving. There's still like 6 bolts in there, but none of them are in alignment. And so that's part of the issue. Let me show you here. See those bolts in there, but see how crooked this is? See, the holes are not even lined up. And so this bolt has to go in sideways. So whoever put that on did not line these up properly. One bolt to go. And it's really the hardest to get in there on the back side. It's so tight that I can't torque both at the same time, hold one and torque the other at the same time. And of course it's right on top of the brake line. There we go. I've got it wedged between another bolt and the wrench on this back side here. All right, now I gotta be careful because the whole thing's gonna want to come down on me. I've got to get this wrench out of this spot to make sure it's not gonna come down those brake lines. Okay, now that should be the last one. You can see just how, granted that's the last one, there is some downward force, but all those were misaligned where this bracket, this whole bracket here was too far down compared to the holes in the chassis frame, creating a lot more stress on this. Way more. So that is absolutely adding challenge to this. And also the lower bolts here, this part here, this brace is right in the way of them, so I've turned the socket like this, which meant on those, I had a chance of stripping out, and that was definitely a risk. Oh my God, that's heavy. Well, there's gonna save 20 pounds of weight, dead weight. Okay, so you can see a bolt head, maybe. You can see how it's basically slightly stripped on those middle threads because of this angle and this misalignment. This bracket here weighs 20 pounds of dead weight. That's pretty much right on, 20.1. So I'm gonna go try to reduce this down by basically cutting it right about here so that it's just the part that's attached to the chassis rails and all this lower part's gonna go away. Here we go. Let's hope I'm right, that I won't need this bracket and that I'm gonna be able to cut it with my saw and blade, because I'm not really equipped to cut this big metal. That's really smelling, so I'm gonna let that cool off a little bit. I know I'm really going through my blade. It's not the best tool for cutting this, but it's the best tool I have for cutting this. So it's what I gotta use. It's gonna take some time. I am currently about maybe 1/6 of the way through it. That's it. Yeah, it's gonna be a while. It's gonna be tough. And unfortunately there are two brackets like this I need to cut, and so it's gonna suck. $11 pounds, 10.8 pounds. That's half of that gone. Woo-hoo! Don't know what I'm gonna do with this. Okay, so here we go. I am struggling here. EarthCruiser tightened these bolts down way too tight. It took me probably 15 minutes of penetrating fluid, of impact wrench. Look at all the tools and implements of destruction I've got going on here. Simply remove a few smaller bolts from down in here. So bring up side by side. It's really hard to get to in here. And I've got this cross member that holds the transmission up, so I can't take that out. And I've got these two bolts still left that are, this one's fairly easy to get to. All the rest were incredibly hard to get to. That one I can't get to from this side until I take this bolt out right here. And this one right here happens to be lined up with this piece. And so I have to go in an angle, and it is so tight that I cannot even get it out with this massive breaker bar here, which is like a 2.5 foot long breaker bar. So I am struggling to remove these, and I'm getting pretty frustrated right now, particularly upset at EarthCruiser for just way over torquing these, just to tighten them down until their wrench can't give anymore. That is just completely makes everything so much harder for anybody else working on it ever again, and it's way overkill. You think about like a lug nut typically takes somewhere between like 120 and 160 foot-pounds of torque. This impact wrench here driver will do somewhere around 300 to 400 foot-pounds and even to 500 foot-pounds, and so it's over that, and that's insane. You know, when I can stand on it with all my weight and I'm still just elevated in the air off my breaker bar and I can't break it free, it's obviously well above that and way above what it needs to be. I'm really upset at people when they don't just do the torque necessary. Yeah, for something so simple to have to spend literally hours on removing a simple bracket here so that then I can spend an hour or two to cut it down for something they just could have done that right from the beginning and just gave it to me cut down, or just gave me the, I don't know, gave it to me with this unattached or partially just loftily attached. Anyways, I'm frustrated. It's taking a lot of time. But one good news, I do have my pass-through frame that's at least in there. It's lined up. I've got it traced out where I think it goes. I'm going to have another set of eyeballs put in this before I do something really, really damaging. And that's cut a really big hole in the back of a brand new vehicle that's pretty much unrecoverable if I put this big hole in here. So I got to get this right, and it's going to take a lot of work just cut this hole in here. So anyways, that's I'm trying to just kill some time here while I'm waiting for parts to arrive before I can really do anything else between the chassis rails, which of course keeps me from putting the camper box on and mounting that up. And so I'm waiting for that. That's going to, unfortunately, it's killing me a week. And meanwhile, I'm waiting for a second set of eyeballs to come here and check my work on this before I start cutting, and also remove this glass so out of there, and help remove these bolts that I can't get to with only two hands. So once I get my friend here to help me out, hopefully get those things done, at least can get this bracket off. I can cut that down, get that remounted, and then take this pass-through frame off and start doing the big nasty and cutting a big hole in this vehicle I've had for just a week. A really expensive new vehicle. Wish me luck. Big, long, massive subframe cage. You can see this thing's enormous. This is probably about 16 or 18 inches long. The subframe mounts here at the top, top of this urethane bushing, and it only really mounts to the frame. This thing weighs 21.1 pounds, so I'm going to reduce it by more than half of that. It only mounts the subframe right from here up. And so it doesn't need all the rest of this material down here. So I have all this extra metal I can cut off. The challenge is cutting it off. I do have this 12-inch cutoff wheel, which is rad that I have that. But last time when the other one I cut off on the other side and I reduced it down at an angle about like here, that probably took about an hour to cut it with a cutoff wheel. I had to stop a couple of times to let the cutoff wheel cool off, the metal cool off. You can see it actually did melt the plastic. So I'm gonna take my time again. It also reeks, it smells because the powder coat burns off, and of course the metal's burning and the cutoff wheel is burning. So none of that's really very healthy. And so, anyways, I wish I had a better tool, but I don't have a better tool. This would tear up my bandsaw blade. I don't have any better way to cut it off that I know of. I don't really have a better tool. So I'm going to have to spend some time to this day, get this cut off, cleaned up, meaning filed the edges, repainted where I cut it, and then remounted. And let me tell you, taking it off was about a 2-hour ordeal, and it took 2 people because the bolts are so tucked away inside the chassis rails there. They're so hard to get to, and they were so over torqued on some of them. One of them was completely loose, by the way. They never even tightened it. You could move the bolt back and forth almost 1/4 inch. The nut was on, just was completely loose. 2 or 3 of them were so tight that an air gun would not undo them. They were that torqued. I stood on them with a breaker bar at the end of the breaker bar with all my weight when it would still not break that bolt or nut free. They way over tightened them, especially.